And as we've been hearing there, many households in Cleat Hill remain evacuated following the explosion, like I said, that happened 10 days ago. And residents say they're keen to go home. A meeting was held last night to discuss when they might be able to return home. And Richard Fuller is the Conservative MP for North Bedfordshire and was at the meeting last night. Good morning to you, Richard. So what was the outcome of last night's meeting then?
Well, sort of three levels of updating local residents. First of all, on that important issue that your reporter just had about how long are people going to have to stay in temporary accommodation? What is the plan to provide a permanent solution to the escaping of gas? And there were some good updates on that, potentially some progress on the second of those issues, that permanent solution in the next couple of days. And then there's some wider questions about why was this allowed to happen? What's the regulations around someone drilling a 100-meter hole in someone's back garden and no one knowing about it?
Okay, so let's just go through some of those issues that were raised. What is the feeling amongst the community at the moment? Is there understanding? Is there patience, or are they just really keen to get back into their homes now 10 days on?
Well, I think after a really rocky start about a week ago, the Borough Council has really stepped up and restored people's confidence very much indeed. Those immediate questions about, where am I going to be housed? Am I going to have access to my home? And over the last few days, those who haven't had access back to their homes to pick up belongings. Remember, people were given just a few minutes to evacuate, so they just really went in what they were standing in. So those issues have been solved. So I give big tribute to the council for stepping up. But people are still quite anxious about what does it mean if they're given the okay to return, given what happened in July.
An investigation is still ongoing into the cause of the explosion, as we know. Do we know any details? Yeah, was anything revealed last night at the meeting?
Well, I think people, when it came to those questions, those on the panel, and the council had arranged quite a wide-ranging panel, including the Health and Safety Executive. On the meeting earlier in the week, we had the Royal Geological Society, and yesterday we had actually insurances on because people worried about their home insurance. But as far as the next steps, they weren't too specific. They were saying in the next few days, we're going to try and they gave some descriptions about what they are trying to do. It sounds good, but of course, as they said, it all depends on whether this particular solution will work. It is important to know this. They're now doing what they originally were planning to do, they say, back in July, but didn't do.
I think, like a lot of people, I mean, I for one definitely didn't know, but what a heat pump was and what actually involved. I didn't know. It meant you had to bore down over 100 meters to tap into that I didn't know. It was a real learning curve for me on that one as well. So, what is the solution here? What is the plan to make this area safe?
Well, and that's exactly right about it. So I can just go to the broader point. I mean, it came as a shock to me, actually, and that people could drill so deeply into a garden and no one need to know about it. It's what's called permitted development. So I'm going to raise some questions with ministers about, is there a gap here in the regulations? I'm told that this sort of incident hasn't occurred before, so it's quite rare, but now it has occurred. We really ought to look at the regulation to see if they are up to date and what people would anticipate should happen, particularly as the new government particularly is keen to move forward with these renewables. So we'll see a lot more of these drillings for ground source heat pumps. So it's important the regulations keep up with the experiences we've had, particularly this one.
Insurance is another good point that was raised, Egg. I mean, can the people in the area get home insurance right now?
Well, as a lady yesterday said, some people will be renewing their insurance the next couple of months. So it's important to get clarification. There was someone, the council arranged for a speaker from the Association of British Insurers to be on the call yesterday. He didn't have specific answers, but I'll be meeting with him in the next couple of days on the broader issues about, in instances like this, where there's been a finding of gas, will it affect people's ability to get their house insured? Will it affect their premiums? And also for some people, at some point, they might want to sell and move. What's the impact going to be on their house prices? And is there a support package in place to help people with that?
When stuff like this happens, of course, it catches people unaware. Of course it does. But it's always heartwarming to see the response from the local people, the community, for those that have been affected by this.
It is, and I've got to give a shout out to St Mark's Church in Brickhill, neighbourhood church. They have provided facilities, teas and coffees, community. I've seen people bring in baked goods for people, food for people, sandwiches for everyone. So it really is heartwarming to see the local community and the church providing all that support for local residents. And I know it's appreciated from my conversations with the people of Cleat Hill.
If I may, just moving further afield, the budget will be announced tomorrow. What are your hopes and concerns for the people of North Bedfordshire?
Well, I think most people in North Bedfordshire just want the budget to happen rather than to all these stories appearing in the press. Obviously, Sir Keir Starmer has said everything's terrible, and that's a part of getting people ready for some choices that Rachel Reeves will make tomorrow to increase taxes and to put some more money into various things. I think, look, it's the first budget of the new government. I think we should give them a clear run to say what their priorities are, not assess it beforehand, and then in the next couple of days afterwards, really go through it to make sure that it holds together. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have memories of the pasty tax budget back in 2011, 2012. So there's always something that trips up a government. But let's give this new government a chance. But I am concerned that they're pushing in the wrong direction of more tax, more spending and more borrowing at a time when the government really ought to be looking to live within its means, because with people's incomes quite pressured by inflation, there's not much capacity for people to take on more taxes.
Are we expecting an update on the East-West Rail tomorrow as well?
Well, I hope tomorrow they'll cancel it and say, here's £7 billion or more of savings that we can put into other services or into tax cuts. But I think hope springs eternal on that one. We may hear announcements on East West Rail. We may hear announcements about Universal. I was surprised that that wasn't included in the investment summit as an announcement, but all in due course for us. But whatever happens, North Bedfordshire is undergoing substantial change. Today, I'm putting in my submission on a massive solar farm in the north of North Bedfordshire that will have a very big impact on the local environment.
And Richard, read the budget, and I think a majority of listeners understand that we've got to make up this deficit, this black hole as it's been called, and that's why taxes will be some taxes will be going up. That's why the heating allowance, the inheritance, and now we're hearing that the bus transport cap is going to be lifted. You seem to be kicking the rank and file, getting a good old kicking in this budget.
Yeah, well, of course, it's not us kicking now. I'm a Conservative and it's the Labour Party. And of course, the Chancellor wants to say that things are very bad. I think she's sort of been caught out in her saying that there's a massive black hole that seems to grow every day, every time she speaks. That's not the case. And as the IFS, which is the independent think tank, says, everything about the numbers was known before the election. But on the issue of bus fares, the £2 bus fare, maximum bus fare, has been a tremendous success for local residents, particularly in the villages. It gives people some confidence that they can get around, get to work using the buses at a much cheaper rate than using other forms of transportation. And obviously, the new government's looked carefully at this, but a 50% increase in that cap may put people off and sort of stop the progress towards greater use of buses, which was a big push from Boris Johnson onwards.
And also, just before I let you go, and I really appreciate your time, final couple of questions, Cleat Hill. I mean, what's the timescale for people going home? I mean, what is going to happen to make the area safe? What guarantees will people get that it'll be safe to go home? Any ideas on those?
Yes. So number one, they were very clear. The health and safety executive yesterday, who's overseeing the solution, were very clear not to set a timeline. They were clear on what they were doing, but they weren't sure it would work, and they didn't want to set expectations. But that work is ongoing as of now. Once that solution is in place, people will want reassurance that the gas that may have seeped into the soil is not going to be a risk. The HSE already have monitors in the ground to check what is the level of natural gas. Remember, this gas is odorless, so you won't know it's there. So these monitors are important, but they're in the ground already. They monitoring that gas. We were told last night the gas levels are very low. But people will then want, I think, additional reassurance that it's safe to go back. The same sort of incident where people thought it was safe, but actually it turned out not to be safe, that won't recur. And I think that's going to take quite a lot of reassurance from the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, to persuade people that it's okay to go back on to their homes, particularly those who are closest to where that borehole is.
So many questions, isn't there? Because we're being told that heat pumps are the future. You know what I mean? And I think we like you said, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, and this may be a sort of a very, very rare event. It may indeed be the only event. But if we are going to move forward with this rush to renewables, and ground source heat pumps are to be allowed to be part of that, it's important we look at the regulations. Is it right that people can drill a hole 100 meters deep in their garden and no one needs to know about it? Not the council, not the planning authority, nobody else. That's a big question that arises from what's happened in Cleat Hill.
A final question. You've asked the government to do more to help in Cleat Hill. When do you expect an answer on this?
Well, I think there's a series of answers. There's ones about support for the council so they can continue to fund all this extra help. And the council just put extra help in for people who are victims of flooding recently. So one aspect I'm doing is to help the council get the resources that it needs. The second is the issues about what are the regulations. That's with the Department for Energy. And the third is the question of what happened between July and September, who was in charge, and why were my residents essentially left at risk? Because whatever was happening didn't provide the solution people expected and ended up with this very, very tragic outcome.
Richard, as always, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Fuller there, who is the Conservative MP for North Bedfordshire and was at this meeting last night that happened for the residents of Cleat Hill. Want to know really so many questions. They want answers. And more importantly, when are they going to be able to go home? And will it be safe to do so?